Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today I'm going to continue working on the Grand Hotel from Stamperia. And I just want to refresh your memory. This is 8.5 by 10.5. It's a 4-page pocket page mini album, and all the flaps have been done in the previous tutorial. So now we're going to focus on getting the design layers in. So I think I've pre-cut most everything. I'm going to possibly have to do a little bit of trimming as we go, but I'm hoping that will go fairly quickly. So you're going to need your glue for sure, your trimmer, and your ink pads in case you have to adjust the trim. And with that, I'm going to sit down and get started. Okay, so let me walk through page 1. So page 1 has what kind of looks like a door feature that opens to the left, to the right, and then opens again. So I do know that I'm going to do some color blocking inside. So we will do a little bit of trimming, but the outside papers I think I've pretty much got trimmed to the right measurements. So with that, my dog Nala is in the house and she's chasing a fly, making a lot of racket. So hopefully it's not too bad for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and get these two little pockets put in first. Sorry. And then this will be the back of the pocket. So this is the bottom and this is the inside of the pocket, or the top. So I'm just dry fitting real quick. It looks good. I've already inked the edges on this, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. I went back and forth about inking the edge of the coordinating cardstock that I'm using, and I pretty much opted away from that. I think my ink is really too dark, and I'm just not a big fan of that anyway. And I'm sure part of that is because I never got very proficient at it. I just like to knock off the white edge on any patterned paper. And since this doesn't have a white edge, it's a solid core, there's really nothing to do. So I just cut it and put it in the way it is. And that is just purely personal preference. All right, that's in. So I'll go over one more time. If you hadn't watched the first video, I am using 1 pack of the 22 sheet Stamperia Grand Hotel and 1 pack of the 10 sheet Stamperia Grand Hotel. And then in addition to that, I've added 8 sheets of 8.5 by 11, 8 sheets of a coordinating cardstock, and you will need those 8 sheets. You can either buy another pack of the Grand Hotel and replace this with pattern paper, or you'll need 8 sheets of 8.5 by 11 to complete the album as it's designed here. And I use almost all of my cardstock. There's a few slivers left, but I don't even think I have anything as large as say 4x6 photo mat. So I really did use all of it, and you'll see it sprinkled throughout the album. Okay, it's not something I usually do with Graphic because Graphic offers a set of papers, patterns and solids, that you can pull from, but Stamperia does not. So I really felt like it needed one more element or another pack, and if I had another pack, I would have used more of the stripes in the album. I felt like I really had to economize on my stripes and make sure they were distributed. And I didn't run out. There's lots more floral pattern than the stripes. And this didn't need to be so long. I don't know why I didn't trim it shorter, but I didn't, so here it is. We're gonna do it as I have it. Okay, it goes down. All right, so now, because we did push this inside the pocket, that'll make putting our tags in so much easier because it won't get hung up on the hinge. Okay, now we're going to get this one in. Make sure you get glue on your tape so that your piece can slide into the pocket. I think actually on the back page I made these a little bit smaller, and they're just easier to handle that way. Smaller, I mean shorter. I could have easily taken 1.5 inches off this. And I'm holding it, lifting it, and pushing it. And I'm lifting it to make sure it's not going onto the tape until I'm ready. Okay, and okay, so it's starting to take shape. Okay, so the next thing are these two tags. I'm going to set this aside for a second. So each one of these is going to be adhered to a piece of black cardstock, like so. Yep, and I'm gonna, before I do that, I'm gonna check one more time to make sure that these tags are gonna slide in easily, because if we're gonna trim anything, it needs to be now. And it goes in, but I'm thinking if I layer it one more time, it might get to be a little too thick, so I might trim these down a bit. Nope, I like it. Okay. So I have a nice quiet day at home with my dog. My husband is a Jeep enthusiast, so he's out on a trail. He tried to get me to go, but thank goodness I got to stay home and craft. I'm really not a big fan of driving around in the trails. I like getting there and seeing the view, but it's hard for me to give up a whole day for that. It's pretty dirty and rugged. But we live in California and the mountains are close and the desert's close, so there's lots to look at. Anyway, he's out and that gives me all the time I need to get a good part of this album put together. Now, as you can see, these are short, and I accidentally did that. I didn't mean to do that. I wanted these panels to be about the length or the height of the book, and I don't know what I was thinking when I trimmed this, but I trimmed it short. So I have a couple of options. One, I could shorten the whole thing, and if I do, about that much of the gray will stick out, which I don't think I like. So the other option is to trim to fit and to add a coordinating strip across the bottom, which is what I think I'm going to do. Or conversely, it could be a strip across the top, depending on how you want to look at it. So at the moment, I don't have that strip picked out. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these panels on, get them in the pockets, and come back to that after I get the rest of my loose sheets in for page 1. Okay. So I want to give a shout out to one of many of my favorite customers, but Lynn, you know who you are, the one that laughs when she's listening to me with her headphones and her husband thinks she's nuts. Who are you talking to? It's Daphne. So I really appreciate everybody's comments and getting back to me and chatting with me in YouTube. It makes me feel like I know you, and I like that. I think that's fun. I think that's a big part of the craft community, so I really enjoy it. Okay, so now I'm going to get these in first, and then we'll go to the inside. So I'm going to set the insides aside for now, and we'll pick those up in just a minute. And I just did that because I want to get rid of some of the bulk. I'm going to, I was going to say I'm going to do this last because I need to put magnets in, but I already did put magnets in, but I'll come to that after I finish my flaps. Part of the reason too is as I get my flaps in and I continue to fold it back over on itself and close it, I want to make sure it's staying clear of this score line. And if it gets to be too bulky, I can actually trim this down a little bit to help for clearances. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to turn it around so I can see these edges a little closer. And I'm going to pull out my contrast sheet so I can better see all the way down to the edge of this flap. which is hard to see because it goes right into another, actually, that's the flap. There we go. There we go. Let's see, how did I do? Ooh, it needs to be trimmed. Okay, let's check again. Wow, I didn't make this wide enough. I wonder if I did that on both of these. Nope, just that one. I'm gonna have to, hopefully, yay, I do. Yay, I do have more. This one's a little too shallow, so I am going to actually trim out a new piece for that. I think I'll take a smidge off. And then re-ink my edge. Okay, so this is the top, this is the bottom. I know this is the top pattern, so that's one of the nice things about having a split pattern on your inside cover is it helps you keep track of up and down, top and bottom. Okay. Hopefully I turned the video on. I'm having a panic attack that I forgot to turn the video on. So I'm gonna stand up and hopefully, yes, I did. Gosh, I don't know what comes over me sometimes. It's like, what, did I do that? Okay, so that is in. So now I'm going to turn it around and get ready to do the other side. And put my contrast paper in. I'm gonna check it, but I'm thinking I have to trim a new piece. Yeah, I'm kind of fussy about these things. So if I make my margins even on 3 sides, you can see the 4th side's not quite right. Some people that's okay. I'm pretty persnickety about that, so I am gonna trim a new piece out. And fortunately for me, I have one. And what I'm going to do is, ooh, it's a little shy. Oh my gosh. You can see it's a little shorter than this one. Eek. Now I have another decision to make. Which one do I like better? Oh, that's tough. This is actually 1/8 of an inch shorter than the panel that I had here. And I actually think I can live with a wider margin than a shorter paper. Well, c'est la vie. It is what it is. I don't have any options because I used all the paper. So don't make the same mistake I did. Be careful. Measure twice, trim once. At the end of the day, if I really can't live with that, after I get it finished and I look at it, I will cut a thin strip of coordinating paper and mask it. And when I say thin, probably like a 1/2 inch. I don't want it to be too thin, but I would just come in a 1/2 inch on both sides. So it would be a design feature for both pages. I do believe your eyes are going to be drawn toward the center and not to the edge in this case, just because of the way the page opens. So that's why I've decided to place it with the inconsistent margin toward the outside. So when you open the page, this is what you're going to see. So I think you're going to be drawn here. And I think I'm ready to go ahead and put this piece in. Yeah, I should dry fit again. You know what, I'm going to wait until I get all the rest of the paper in, just in case it gets too bulky and I need to trim this piece out. So I'll set that aside. close this side, and we will get started on this side. Okay, so I have a total of 4 pieces to work with. 1 full panel and 1 will be a partial. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure all 3 of these are trimmed out to the same width. And it doesn't look like they are, so I'm going to have to adjust that. Set that aside. And that looks good. But I'm going to crank it around and use my contrast paper to verify it before I lay my paper down. That's really tight. I'm going to shave something off of it. Tight to the score line. Okay, I feel better. Yeah, that'll operate more freely because remember we're going to have more paper on this side. Okay, I'll ink the edge I just trimmed, which is here. And then we'll get this in. There we go. So I really love this paper. When I say this paper, I mean I like this collection, but I just in general just think Stamperia does an outstanding job on their paper. The quality is top notch, and I'm looking forward to actually doing my next album, which will be Oriental Garden. I'm looking forward to putting that one together too. I'd already started doing some of the trimming and page planning, and man, I like that collection. It's going to be very pretty. I just love watercolor in general. I think I have a love affair with watercolors, so if you like that kind of thing, the brushwork is really pretty. And then there's a whole sheet of cut-aparts that just have little sayings on it, and it's so cute. It's so pretty, and it's going to be so easy to just add these little sayings around where your photos would be mounted. All right, so now we have a little planning to do. I know this is going on the bottom, and this is going on the top, and this is going somewhere in the middle. And I think I'm going to I'm verifying no magnet exposure, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to start by putting the floral piece in and then measure everything up from there. So one of the things I want to do is make sure the floral piece on the opposite side that goes in over here, that they're both the same height and width, so there's some consistency, and they're slightly off. So I'm going to fix that very quickly. And these are about 5 1/8 inch high, and just under 4 inches wide, because that's how wide the panel is. So it's probably 3 7/8. That would be my normal trim too. Okay, so now these are the same. And why was that important? Well, it's important if you're piecing, as your eye travels across, you want to see this landing on the same horizon. And if your papers are offset, you will see that. It will jump out at you. Okay, now checking for width. And check on this side too, just to make sure if I trim one, I want to trim both. And I think I need to trim a little because it's coming right into the hinge area. So a little 1/16 of an inch. slipped on me. Try that. Okay, I think I like that. All right, re-ink those edges and we'll get them down. So I did the build video earlier today and it was raining, which is weird for us this time of year. And now it's blazing hot and sunny. So a lot's changed in the last 4 hours. So I'm looking for consistency in this line across the bottom, if I can. I'd like to see that. It's not always possible, but that looks pretty good. Okay, now we have to figure out how to trim these two pieces out. So this is going to take a minute, but once we do it once, it'll go much faster on the next one. Sorry, I'm feeling around. Here it is for the cap to my glue. All right. So let's see, is it the right width? Yes, it is. Is this the right width? No, as you can see, it's slightly off, so I'm going to trim that. And I mentioned this before, but the width of the lead makes a difference when you're trimming. If you're going to mark a tick mark, you want that to be as thin as possible. Otherwise, you're trying to decide, am I going outside or inside or in the middle of that line? And this is a 0.035. It's about as thin as you can get, and it really saves me a lot of time of going back and forth to the trimmer, because I know that when I put it in my trimmer, I'm putting the line right on the edge of the trimmer. And look at that. There you go. So to me, that's worth futzing around with and using a lead that is thin makes that a lot easier. Okay, I'm just pushing that contrast paper in so I can see my corners. And for some reason, I don't think this is square, so I'm going to attempt that one more time. I've been having trouble with my paper torquing a little bit. Oh, that's the tag on the front. I'm like, what is this thing sticking out? It's the tag, which I think I'm going to remove because it's making it too hard to see the edge. Okay, that's beautiful. That's right. Right on. Okay, now what to do here. So there's a couple options. We can trim this down and just lay it here, or we can frame it in black. And I'm leaning toward just laying it right on top. So I'm going to trim a little off the gray because these don't actually have to touch each other, since I'm going to lay something on top of it. And this is going to go right here. Okay, I'm going to trim this down so that it's right on the edge of that red. Oops, I dropped it. All right, here we go. All right, so I can go this way or this way, and I like it this way, so that's the way it's going in. So I'm going to put this down first and then come back and put my stripe in. Okay, and then I've got my stripe piece that's going to go right here. like so. And I'm going to ink the edges of it so it stands out. There's a little more contrast. There we go. I'm liking that. I like it. So when I come back to do the tags, the bottom of the tag, I'll do something similar. I'll add a coordinating strip, but it'll depend on what's left over, honestly. Trying to decide where I want this. Bit of ink. There we go. I like it. I like it. I like it. Okay, now we're going to cap my glue. Since it got so hot, everything's drying. Okay, so this is the two inside panels. So I like to think of it as like, this is A, B, C, and D. Okay, and then on A, we need to make sure we get our tag back in our pocket. Okay, so that is done. Now, let's see, and it's still holding. So even after I added all that paper, the magnets are still attracting as we had hoped. Okay, so, of course we'll still have to add this, but yeah, it's still working. Awesome. Okay, so the next thing is inside. Turn this around, I'm gonna get my paper, get it under here, and get this tag out because it's sticking over the edge and it's confusing my eye. All right, so the next thing is I gotta go back and look at my original design. This is gonna go in. So I'm dry fitting and making sure I'm clear of the score line. I think I'm gonna take a smidge off. See how that looks. A little more. Okay, that looks good. So we'll ink those edges that I just trimmed. And then I've got my book turned around so the top is this way and the bottom is this way. So yeah, it goes in this way. There's a direction on this paper, but it's very faint. I don't think you'd notice if you put it in upside down. Oh, so I was telling you how much paper it took. So one of the things I did not mention is there are ephemera sheets or cut-aparts, and I've done all my cut-aparts, and some of the cut-aparts in the collection you can only use as cut-aparts. There is no pattern on the back side that's usable. It's just the flip side of the tag or ephemera, whichever one you're cutting. And so those are all cut apart, set aside, and I'll be using those in the embellishment phase of the album. But that's part of the reason why 32 sheets doesn't stretch, because I think there are, six sheets that that have, well, there's some like this where you've got ephemera or 6 by 6 or 5.5 by 5.5 on one side and a full print on the other. I think there was 2 of these and 4 of the cut aparts that can't be used. So you really don't have 32 12 by 12 sheets to start with. So the first thing I did was get the cut aparts out, the ones that where you don't have an option, you have to use it as a cut apart, and set those aside, and then did my paper planning. If I had planned on sheets, I would have run short. Okay, now I've got it oriented in the right direction again. That's up, this is down. And now we're gonna get these pieces in. So as before, we're gonna lay this down first, second, and then third. But before I do that, I'm gonna make sure everything is the same width. And it looks like I need to trim a little off the gray one. Okay, check again. And when I check, I'm just stacking it and looking to see if one is whiter than the other. Still a little bit. Very good. Okay, that goes together well. So this is the right orientation. I'm going to close this and get my paper behind here so I can see the edge here. And now I'm looking at the width to make sure, and I did it once before, but I'm double checking before I glue it down that I can get it in clear of the hinge. Man, I'm really having a hard time with my glasses today. I don't know what the deal is. Or maybe it's my eyes. Maybe it's my allergies. But I wear bifocals, and I'm having a hard time focusing on the lower lens. It's just not happening. I'm getting a ton of glare. Nope, that wasn't going to work. All right, after this one, I think I am going to take a break and try to get my eyes clear because I'm really having a hard time focusing on where things meet. So I'm just going to trim a little bit out of the middle because they don't have to touch. Get this in and then get our little trim piece in. Okay, I'm again going to trim this just right below this red fringe, which in this case happens to be at 1 inch. So if you don't want to use the pattern I'm using, but want a contrast strip, it's 1 inch wide. Okay, now here I'm going to open this up and look across because I want to place this so visually there's a continuation. So I'm going to try to figure out the best orientation to achieve that. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm just using this white piece of paper to create a visual plane that I can use as a reference. Okay, now I'm going to turn it sideways so I can get a better look at side to side. That's it. That's it. It looks lovely. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Okay, now the last piece, the centerpiece. Coming along, guys. Coming along. I should have trimmed that down a little bit. That's going to bug me. Oh, well, what do you do? You should see the first album I made. There's just no comparison. Of course, I took a lot longer to make it, but I didn't see all the things I see now because I do it all the time. And I now know to open all 4 pages to see how it's flowing side to side and not look at one page at a time independently. I think that goes a long way for helping you design your pages too, because I always design the 2 opposing pages when they open up and you see the left and right. I design them to complement each other instead of designing them sort of in a vacuum where I don't really care what is on the preceding page. I try to create some level of harmony between the flaps from page to page, particularly when they open up like page 3 and 4, 4 and 5, for example. One's a little unique. 1 and 8 are unique because they just open up to the inside cover. So I typically keep my inside covers free of interactive components. Not everybody does, but I do. But I try to do something on every single internal page. Okay, so that's all in, and then I'll get my tag back in. So we are done with page 1. Yahoo! Hope you guys are liking the way that it's starting to look. It's very romantic. I like the patterns. I think these go together really well. Like I said, I just wish I had a few more stripes to work with, but I'm really happy even with the way this turned out, knowing that I had to pull in a coordinating cardstock. But overall, I really like it. So one of the things I want to go over while we're here, and then I'm going to take a break and come back and do page 2 in a different video, is these are strips on either side of the design. So some of the 12 by 12 pages have these 2 strips, and 2 of the pages actually have it. So I took those strips off and I set them aside, knowing that I would be using them on the inserts. So there's 1 on each side, so there's 2 of these and 2 of these. So when you find that sheet, trim those off and set them aside. And you'll wind up using those for the inserts. Okay, so that's what you see poking out of the edges here. It's these inserts. So, and like I said, those are just the strips that were along the edge of one of the design papers. A lot of the times, and I'd show it to you, except for I cut everything up, on the Stamperia papers in the back, they'll have sort of the marketing picture of each one of the prints, but they'll run a decorative strip down the left and right side of the 12 by 12 back panel. I take those strips off and I use them. And those are things that come in handy for spaces like this. So don't throw anything away. It's all the same paper, texture and feel and weight. So you can use, you know, every bit of the paper that they send you. I often trim off and fussy cut some of the elements that are on the cover too, even though it's not a 12 by 12 sheet. It's great for using little components of it. So, all right, so that's it for page 1. All right, we're on to page 2. And what I had mentioned previously was that I was going to actually apply these flaps inside the mat area, and that's why I didn't install them directly to the pocket page. But in retrospect, after playing around with the layout, I decided I like this best. Originally, I was going to try to push all these together so that they all touched and there was no exposed paper beneath. But then I decided I kind of like the way this frame turned out. The reason I have these flaps sized the way that they are is this is exactly the size of the ephemera in the cut aparts. So that's why I came up with this size. Otherwise, I probably would have made them a little bit larger all the way around so that they came together and none of this was exposed. And here's why that matters. If you put photos beneath the flaps, what happens sometimes is you've got these photos peeking out from underneath, and it can look a little strange. So it's just something to consider as you're putting your album together. That's why I typically don't design this kind of exposure into my flaps. I think it's very pretty to look at, but once you load it up with pictures, it might look a little odd. So just to let you know, that's what my thinking process was originally, and then I've altered it, and I've decided to actually apply these flaps. They could have all four been applied to the pocket page, but what I've done is I've applied them directly to my mat, and I've also placed my magnets. So the magnets are going to be right underneath the front flap, and then they're going to marry to a magnet just beneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by taking all my back magnets off because they're just sitting there and they're just holding on because of the attraction. And I'm going to get the tape off, get this glued, get the tape off, get the magnets back on, and then glue it down. So again, I've just applied the two mats directly to the mat. This mat will get, I said two, but there's four, get applied directly to the pocket page. So I did all that off camera because I was messing around with the overall design. For the next one in the book, there's another page that's a duplicate. I'll actually do the construction. So you'll have it both ways. One where you don't see me do it and one where you see me do it. Okay, so now that my tape is off, I'm going to get this put onto a level surface, make sure all my flaps are closed, lay it down, and then let each one of these magnets find their mate. There it goes. There we go. Okay, now these are all done. And get some glue over the whole thing and then I'm going to lay it down. And it's not really trying to decide if it's directional or not. I think it looks better this way. I'm not really sure if there is a direction. It's actually, I think it was this way because the flowers and then the leaves are cascading down, but it's very close. I think you could do it either way. I just had another one of those moments where I thought I forgot to turn the camera on. I get all that tape covered up just because it'll make it easier to slide my mat into place. Now we'll bring the book back into place. And I am going to actually have to stand up for this and adjust my lighting. Be careful not to drop it, which I almost did. Okay. Oops. All right, that's in. Okay, now I'm going to burnish everything into place. Okay. Actually going to run a bead of glue under here because when I attach these, I actually just taped them to the back side. I didn't adhere them with the tape on the flange itself, so I'm just adding a little glue right under each one of these and pushing it into place. Oops, that was a little excessive. Now on the next one, the duplicate of this page, I will not install it this way. I'll attach the flaps to the page and then lay the mat down on top instead of doing it this way. I find that I get better adhesion of the flaps, but you can do it either way. Okay. All right, and you can see a couple of Mars on these, and that's because I was deciding where to put my magnets, but it will get covered with a mat here in just a minute. All right, so now everything's in a closed position. That doesn't feel very strong, so I'm going to see if I need to reposition this magnet because it didn't feel like it was sticking like I think it should. There we go. I think I had somehow moved it in the process, so I'll reapply it. Okay. All right, and that's in. All right, I'm back to finish page 2. Sorry for the interruption, but I had to make some tweaks. I don't know what my challenge was, but anyways, I've got those tweaks made. Essentially, it doesn't change anything that you've done to date. I had changed some of the measurements, and so actually it will change trimming out these 4 folds that go onto the page. I made them so that they're actually square. So it's 3 5/8 by 3 5/8. And I had actually made it 3 5/8 by 3 3/4. And I'm not sure why, but anyways, I fixed it. And I am going to run that banner across the bottom of the page so that you guys don't make the same mistake I did. You're going to trim the height of these down. The length is correct. You're going to trim the height down to 5 5/8. And I think I told you the measurement was 8 inches, score at 1/2 inch, and then you're going to score again. It's really hard for me to tell. It looks like at 3 3/4, But when I get to the next set, I'm going to double check that, and the banners will be correct. So again, the overall length was correct when we first trimmed out and got ready to install these. I changed the height, so it's now 3 3/8. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start laying down the papers that I've selected. And it is an odd size, and it's sized to fit the ephemera that came in the collection. So if you're not using the collection, you don't have to be so worried about being precise. But when I went to lay it down, I realized I didn't have an even border. And now I do. So, and it's getting late in the day. Unfortunately, I didn't get as much done as I wanted. And I'm using artificial light, never my favorite. But these are all trimmed and inked and ready to go. So these are cut aparts. They're like small ephemeras. And I'm featuring these on page 2 and on page 7. So we'll be doing this again on page 7, and I will be careful to remind you that you need to adjust your flap sizes ever so slightly. It was off 1/8 of an inch, basically. Okay. And it's so funny because before I started sitting down to do this installation of the designer paper, I went and double checked every single flap to make sure they were all the same size, and they were. They were all the wrong size. So I don't mess up a little bit, I mess up big. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it big. So I've made those adjustments, and I've already done page 7. So also on page 7, I'm going to install it the way we should have done the first time. Put the flaps directly on the black page, and then add the mat, as opposed to installing these flaps onto the mat and then the mat to the page. I like the other installation process better. It just feels right. They both work, but it feels better to do it the other way. All right. So I was mentioning earlier that you have several pages that you have to pull out because they're cut aparts, and there's really no option to use a full pattern on the back, and this is one of them. That's why I'm making use of this in the book, because I really couldn't do without these extra pages, so I had to figure out how to make design features that fit directly with the size of this cut apart. And you will also see inside these, when we start decorating them, that's where I'm also making use of the cardstock that I have picked to coordinate. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start this one. I'm going to open these to make sure everything is where I want it, because I have kind of a diagonal pattern I think I've developed. And there we go, yeah. So there's the cardstock that I'm talking about. So we've got this pattern that goes crisscross, and I like it. The other option is, I don't like that. The other option is I have this paper, and then it's striped on the back. So we could do that, which I think I like better. So we're going to set these aside. We're going to use the stripe. And like I told you before, I just can't get enough of the stripes. So we're going to do that. Okay, so with that, let's get these laid down. Okay, that's one. So I can go ahead and close it. I'm going to scoot my book over a little bit so I'm a little closer to this. I'm going to dry fit this for a second. It looks like it needs to be trimmed down a little bit. It does. So So see how that looks. It's still quite, oh, I know why. So this one's not perfect. When I was trimming it apart, you can see how thin the purple is down here. So this one's actually slightly undersized compared to the rest. So I think I'm going to trim this to match that so that it's not so obvious. I'll have to be careful because I have no extra cardstock. If I mess up, I'm out. Okay, that looks better. Yeah. Let's get this in. Okay, that's in. Okay, so we got two done, two down. All right, I'm just gonna put a tick mark on this. I guess I didn't do these very good. Very good job. Okay, that looks good. It's deceiving. It's a small design feature, but it takes a ton of paper to pull it off. Okay, this is a little too wide. And this has a white core, so we'll need to ink it. Okay, that looks good. So we're going to ink that edge that we just trimmed. Okay, so now all the top and backs are done, so we now need to do the middle. So let's see what we have. I'm going to do a diagonal. Like so. Okay, and then this one is going to go up here. And trim a little off. Beautiful. Hey, so earlier this week or a couple days ago, I did a video on the bookbinding tape, and I was actually used it on this book, and that was kind of the delay in getting the video out. I needed to be somewhere in the process of actually building the book. And a lot of times I'll build the base album ahead in advance and have a couple sitting on the shelf ready to go when I'm ready to do some work. So I finally got to a point where I was out of my pre-made books and made one, so I could videotape that process. I got a lot of good feedback, and one of the things I realized based on the comments is I didn't actually mention what the brand of that tape is, and it's Lineco tape. And the reason I found it was I actually did some research on bookbinding in general. So I figured, you know, that would be the group that I would want to sort of investigate, since they, you know, work on archival quality materials just like we do. So that's how I found it initially. Like I said, I really like that it's fabric and that it stretches, because it really molds to your book. Now, I've heard from a couple of people since I posted it, and they put out some other suggestions. One of them is the tape that they use on hockey sticks, which I've heard of and I had seen, but I haven't actually experienced it. And I'm not sure it's archival quality, but I'm going to do some additional investigation, and I appreciate all the feedback, because I'm always looking for better products too. Better and, you know, price points, decent price points. So this tape is not cheap. So I wouldn't say that, you know, it's an inexpensive part of your project. So now I'm trying to decide if I want to do two patterns on the page, or if I want the back sides of both of these to be different. And I kind of like this symmetry. So you can't really see the insides of the other ones when this is open, so it doesn't really matter. And you'll see what I mean. You can't open these on top of each other. So it's never, you're never going to see them together, I guess is the point. So it's okay to have two different patterns. And it looks like that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna get that in. We're almost done with page 2, the never-ending page. So again, back to the bookbinding tape. Thanks everyone. And like I said, the brand of the tape is Lineco, and they are a company that does bookbinding supplies in general, including glues. So I figured they'd be pretty good to work with, and they have been. I'm really happy with the product, but it wouldn't hurt to find something equally as good with a lower price point. I'm just coming to the end of my first roll, and it does last quite a long time. It doesn't take that much on your books. Here we go. And I know some people fabric wrap their albums, which I really like the look of, but it's just so messy, and I'm so impatient. I can't wait for the fabric to dry. On paper, as soon as you put it down, you can add another layer on it. So there you have it. Okay, those two are done. Now we'll work on these two. So I'm gonna do mirrors, so that's gonna go here. And I continue to really struggle with my vision today for some reason. I think it might be allergies. But I'm not sure. Okay, I like it. Yikes. I don't like it when I drop it. Oh, this side I'm definitely going to do the flowers, I think. Yeah. I like it. And it fits. All right. There we go. Okay, 2 more. And we're done with this page. That looks good. Doesn't need anything. And this looks like I need to trim it just a little bit, but let's rotate it and see how it looks. Oh, maybe. I think we're okay. I think we can do it. Okay. I need to clean my tip. So that is a good time. So I'm actually going to do a quick video on how to clean the tip of your art glitter glue bottle. A tip video. And I'll be back in a few minutes because I have to clean it, so now's a good time to do the video. That's not right. So I'm going to try it this way. Yes. It must be just slightly smaller one way than the other because it looks better this way. Okay. Page 2, ta-da! It's finally finished. There it is in all its glory. And this is all held together with magnets, which I showed you in the earlier in the video. Okay. All right. So that's the end of page 2. I'm going to be back in a few minutes to show you how to clean the tip of your glue nozzle.